Shalom, today's the 2nd of March and I'm currently studying James 1 verse 26 where James asks if any of you are religious. Now that word religious is connected to the religion he's referring to in the next verse, and that's basically the word that means to fear and to be in trouble. Now that word is first used in Matthew 24:6, where it says, "And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, and see that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." So this is an interesting connection between religious and being troubled or fear and to cry out. It's also related to worship, but in the context of fearing Yahweh, trembling at His word, which is found in the Tanakh. So, but in this context, if you just follow the scripture study tools, it's actually an interesting connection where religious and religion is linked to the end time and also to the idea of wars and rumors of wars. So in my mind, if I use my Hebraic thought methods and thinking, I just look at the words in a verse, in amongst themselves, what they mean, and then I look at those meanings in relation to other meanings within that same verse, and then connect the dots, so to speak. So in Matthew 24, it uses troubled, which is the base word for religious, being religious and religion. And you all know, I've said it before, I'm not really a fan of religion, organized religion. The reason is there's so many man-made traditions and doctrines that is a result of that. So I rather believe in studying the scripture, getting together as like-minded people, and allow the gifts of the Spirit to facilitate the functions within the body to make it a healthy organism, so to speak. So organized religion is normally created by, if you can call it a pyramid structure, which is a business structure, where there's a chief executive officer, a CEO, or a general manager, or whatever you want to call that person, and he is on top. He is the one who dictates everything that's happening below. And it works in that way within the kingdom, where Yahweh is on top, and Yeshua is on top, but He's the head, we're the body. But we seem to draw that triangle down to the body level. It's only applicable to the head. Now, the body now, if you just look at it in a logical sense, in relation to the symbolism of a body, we've got shoulders, we've got arms, we've got hands and feet, you've got the heart, the lungs, and all the organs. And if everybody has a say to what they think their importance are, then everything is equally important within the body. Even two hands, totally the same but opposites of one another, but they look the same, they have the same function, but their function is to push against, to hold something. So you need opposing forces within a healthy body. There need to be that little bit of opposition just to test, that testing, healthy testing, if you want to draw it in context of a fellowship and people discussing a topic. It's always healthy to challenge one another in a loving way with the right motive. That is two hands pressing against one another. It's also 2 feet. The one is slightly out of sync with the other, but they perform exactly the same function but in different time frames. And that gives you the ability to actually move from one place to another. So sometimes the flavor of the week is this, and next week the flavor might change. It might seem like, oh, we're changing direction again. No, we're just taking one step, and then we take another step with the other foot that is exactly the same but opposite of the other foot. So it seems like we're all over the place when you just look at it from the foot's perspective, from a lower level. But when you When you zoom out and you look at it from the top down, you actually see that, oh, we're walking. We are definitely walking in a direction. Now the head provides a direction, but we should never challenge the function of the gifts working together. So sometimes it's not logical because spiritual things can't be really comprehended by human reasoning and natural thought processes. We need to be synced in with Yahweh's Spirit in order to understand spiritual things. Now in saying that, I just want to lay that as a foundation regarding religion. Now religion has got the top down, so someone who's studied for 7 years, who's a pastor, he is definitely in charge. I can trust him because he's an educated man, he's got the papers to prove it. But it doesn't work that way in the Spirit. Yahweh appoints someone, he anoints someone, and that someone's got to function equally important to his fellow believer who's got another function within the same body. So that no one is the boss, so to speak. Only Yeshua is the head. The rest below him is flat structure. Equally important but different functions. Very important to understand. That's why I don't like organized religion, because it's set up a little head structure under the main head, and the little head is now in charge of another little head, and that little head is in charge of other body members, and they are of lesser importance as you go down the list. And that's not the way Yahweh intended it. He select people who are honorable, and that's based on last week's study, to anoint them with different gifts to fulfill the fullness of all the functions required within a healthy body. So you need 2 lungs, 1 heart, 1 stomach, 2 hands, 2 feet, 2 legs, 2 arms, and so on and so forth. So it's important to understand the differences. So if someone is different than me, it's not wrong. It doesn't mean that there can't be a different opinion, because it just might be another viewpoint that's part of the stepping process, one step after another. And it looks slightly different from your point of view, but if you look at the bigger picture, it makes perfect sense. Very important to understand. So that's just my little 2 cents on a religious system. Now religion in the context of Matthew is connected to the end times, specifically to preempting the coming, the second coming of Mashiach. So, and we all know that religion is also mentioned in the book of Revelation. And religion is described as a female entity. Now, everywhere in Scripture, when you read about Israel, she's referred to as a female, the bride and the wife, and so on. In the same way, the same female symbolism is used to describe religion in an end-time context. Now, what is that description? It's not a nice one. It's called the whore of Babylon. Whore, in a sense, she was earmarked. Remember, this is religion. It means that they believe in Jesus Christ. But she committed adultery. That's why she's labeled as a whore. Now, adultery is similar to idolatry. The one is physical, the other one is spiritual. So, spiritual idolatry or spiritual adultery is what gave her this title as being the whore. And Yahweh is not happy with her. He's actually, I think it's Revelation 15, I think he's calling her out. He said, come out of her, my people. So you won't be part of the judgments that will come upon her. So everything in Revelation that's preceding the second coming of Mashiach is about the conflict. There's first of all a conflict amongst religious people. So I connect the dots now. Religion and being religious to wars and rumors of wars. A rumor is something that is covert. It's undercover. It is like brewing underground and you don't really notice it. But if you really focus on it, you acknowledge its existence. So rumor is not really, is there a war, isn't there a war? No, that word rumor in Greek actually means covert. It's covered, it's undercover. It's like the Cold War that we currently have, the World War III scenario, which is a war but it's not really a war. We don't know it's a war. We speculate it might be one, but it's undercover. There's definitely a war happening currently, in the spiritual as well as in the physical. It's an underlining war, and they use different techniques and different weapons. They use false media. They use all sorts of. They use the internet. They use fear and news and all sorts of things to basically control people, because at the end of the day, the function of a war is to instill fear. Now that's also the base word for religion, to instill fear. So this war that is going on is a religious or spiritual war, or spiritual warfare, or war in the spiritual, that Matthew is basically underlining here. It's a covert war because it's a rumor. It's undercover. It's not seen by the general man on the street. It is only seen by the enlightened ones. That's what we learned last time with the mirror, with the connection to the word re'eh, which is spiritual insight. Only those with the spiritual insight will understand this covert war, this undercover war that's happening in the spiritual, within the physical realm, with physical people. So what is the end goal of war? It is to control the people. It's always about controlling people, to control them and push them to submit under a system. Now in this case, if you read Revelation and overlay the theme of Revelation and all the issues that's highlighted in Revelation, it's about the world system. And that links to Daniel with the statue, the 2 feet 10 toes, the kingdoms that currently rule this world is the mixed system, iron mixed with clay, which is brittle. It's not a solid system. And that's the last kingdom before the stone will hit the statue and totally destroy it, which is basically the detail is described in Revelation. So, and then of course the revelation of Yeshua as the Mashiach, which is the heading of the book of Revelation. This is the revelation of who? Of Yeshua the Mashiach. Revelation is what? First the judge and then the king. And then the revelation of his new heaven and new earth. The restoration process. It's a revelation of that. And also a revelation of the restoration of humanity. That's the end goal of the work of Mashiach that we also touched on last week. So it's all linking together, but you have to overlay these other thoughts with it. Now Matthew help us to connect religion and being religious to the conflict. Now in today's age, I think we're basically within the 40,000s now, different denominations which call themselves Christians, Christianity, different denominations, over 40,000 and counting. Now, because they are different, it means that there's a difference, and the difference has caused the separation. And the separation are basically the conflict in between them, and then they separate them and they make their own. So that's the multiplication and separation. Now with separation, what we learned last week is connected to the word Lashon, which is the tongue. And what did Yahweh use to separate Babylon? The tongue, or tongues. Now what did he call the whore in Revelation? He labeled her as the whore of Babylon. So it's a Babylonian system similar to the Tower of Babel. So religious became this strong entity, a strong tower. We learned that last week as well. We run into the name Kadal of Yahweh, and he's our salvation. But this Kadal means to make something great and to grow. So this religious system is currently growing and becoming more powerful. The reason it's growing and becoming more powerful because it's also under the pyramid or the triangle structure, which is a business system, a physical system, within the overall religious system. So the head of this whore is none other than the Catholic Church. They sit behind it. Now there's numerous studies, specifically Walter Weiss, He's a Seventh-day Adventist, but he's got extremely good information, only based on research. None of his own thoughts and ideas. He just presents the facts and you make your own conclusion. So I encourage you to find him on YouTube and listen to him. Walter Wyth. He's got a few sessions on the Roman Catholic Church and how it basically links to the scripture as well, and also linked to their own writings and what they think of who they are. And they actually confirm themselves that they are in control. And they've got the authority to change times and to change laws. So they change the times, which is the timing, the calendar, which is Yahweh's calendar, to a Gregorian calendar. And also all the festivals, the Moedim, the timings of Yeshua's work, they changed it. Now it's out of sync. So now it's more difficult for general believers who are engaged into that system, that confusion of that system, because Babylon also means confusion. And they don't really know what to look for. And even if the false Messiah come there and they want to test it with scripture, they also need the calendar, the timing. And now the timing is also confused. Now, which one is it now? So confusion is basically a product, part of the means to get something into place. Now, I watched the documentary and I can't remember what the company was and what the topic was, but it was very interesting because within their vision, mission, or whatever they call it, one of their products is confusion, to sow seeds of doubt. And it's in order to do whatever they want to do within this world, and there will be opposition, but if you can sow seeds of confusion, you will get away with it, because you will entrap people into arguing and, is it really so, isn't it so? So one of their main focuses is to sow seeds of confusion through marketing material, whatever they do. So that's basically one of the methods of the Babylonian system, is to put so many ideas out there. And with the internet nowadays, with YouTube and the false teachers and false prophets and false doctrines, everything is available on the internet. So if you don't know what to look for, and if you don't know how to sift through this, you will be entrapped and totally be confused. So that's part of the Babylonian religious system that create conflict, these wars and undercover wars. That is basically the war for your soul, to control people, to submit to the wrong Mashiach. Remember, it is prior to the coming of Mashiach, Matthew 24. And also within Matthew 24, it basically warns us that the false one is coming first before the real one is appearing. That's the time sequence of Matthew 24. So we will see the Antichrist first before we see the real one. So how are we going to protect ourselves in not being deceived? Now, James, last week we touched on that. He said we should be doers of the word. So if you're only a hearer, you will deceive yourself. And the self-deception is building your little framework on how you test everything. But if your framework is flawed, you will be deceived. So having a shallow understanding of the word is basically similar to someone who's only listening to the word, only having factual understanding of what the word is about. How do we, for example, become a doer of the word regarding the Moedim and the work of Mashiach? We need to engage with these festivals, with these Moedim, so we can understand its symbolism, so we can discuss the themes within the time frames of these Moedim. Specifically the last three. They're all about the end times. They're all about the coming of Mashiach, his second coming. So we should gather together and discuss those things, so we can prepare as the bride in order not to be entrapped within the confusion of this Babylonian religious system. Now currently, what the system created is infighting, because I've got friends in the Christian church. I've got a different belief system to them. So whenever there's a topic popping up, there's a fight or conflict or arguing. We try to keep it civil in order to still be able to transfer the knowledge and for them to accept it. And it's also very evident with our Tuesday evening meetings with normal Christians. They've got no idea of end times, of revelation. Oh, they just love Jesus and they're so happy that they're saved and they're so thankful for grace, and that's all they need. Well, that's very, very, very shallow faith, in my opinion. It's all about preparation. I discussed that a couple of weeks ago where James talked about filthiness. Get rid of all filthiness. Filthiness has to do with something that is unclean. Uncleanness, where it becomes an issue, is if you want to enter the presence of Yahweh. You cannot enter the temple unless you are clean. How do I clean myself? We'll read it in the Brit Chadashah. Wash yourself with the water of the word. Prepare yourself so you can be a bride without spot or wrinkle, so you won't be embarrassed when he comes. When you are a bride and your makeup is smudged and your dress is dirty, all the guests are there, you will be so embarrassed. It's so important to read everything in context of everything else within the same theme. So religion and being religious is in the theme of the Babylonian religious system and the warning for those who live in the time frame prior to the second coming of Mashiach. So I just want to underline that. I haven't delved into depths regarding religion, but this is just a few introductory thoughts just to give you the context of that word religious and religion, and also my thoughts on why I don't like religion, and it's linked to Babylonian and the War of Babylon and all that. And the other thing I just want to say before I close is that she is the mother of harlots. So that means that she is the mother, and her daughters, the ones that came from her, the ones who submit to her structure and her system, are called harlots. And guess what? There are 40,000 harlots currently. Not all of them, of course. I say it with a bit of salt and a tongue in cheek. But basically, there are thousands of different denominations who can fit the bill for being called the harlot, which is the daughter of the mother, the whore of Babylon. So we need to have all of that into our front of our minds when we study the end times, when we study anything that James is talking about, because remember when we did the introduction, James is talking to a timeless body that exceeds over generations, and he's basically warning us and teaching us how to stand strong, preparing for the coming of Mashiach. So I hope you have a lovely day. I'll speak to you soon. Shalom.